This is Aaron Thomas Green.
When I left my body, I could actually watch as my body fell to the ground.
When he was 6 years old, Aaron stopped breathing in his neighbor's backyard. For about 30 seconds, he was gone. What he says he saw in those 30 seconds, he spent the rest of his life trying to explain.
There was, billions and billions and billions of souls that were all together with this sun-like entity.
He says he saw the face of God. Says he watched himself choose this life, his parents, his body, even hard things.
In this life, they were going to arrange for me to have my nose broken.
He says the struggles you're going through right now, that you agreed to them before you even got here.
I would need to come back to Earth again. I would have a life where my entire life was one big battle with addiction, and I would die an addict.
I've studied hundreds of these stories, and this one answered questions I didn't think anyone could answer. Questions like, why are we here? What happens when we die? And why the hard parts might not be the whole point. So I sat down with Aaron to understand all of it. And this is his story. I want to go back to before this experience even happened. I want to go to a week before you had your near-death experience. Who were you? Kind of walk me through life at that point in time.
So at that time I was 5. It was, a little before my 6th birthday. I lived with my parents and my older brother. And this would have been, I think, 1981. Back then we didn't have color TVs, video games, no computers or cell phones, anything like that. So mainly what we would do as kids is we would get in groups, go see my friend. We'd kind of roam around the neighborhood, play kickball in the court or play some kind of other games. And that was kind of a typical day in the life for me.
So obviously you were really young when this happened. Take me to the moment where, right before the incident happened and then leading into the incident.
Right before it happened, I was playing with some neighborhood friends, maybe 5 or 6 kids, and my brother was there also. In the house behind our house was where one of my friends lived, and we were in his backyard. And I don't know what we were doing, what we were playing, but we were just doing kid stuff, having a good time. And something happened. I don't understand what happened, but I just could not breathe. No matter what I did, I couldn't get a breath of air. And that I could tell it was getting serious. Like I knew this was a big problem. So I was trying to go home to get help from my mother or father. And I never made it home. Like it triggered, the release of my consciousness or soul from my body.
And then from there, once you couldn't breathe, what was the next key takeaway from like you being here to you being elsewhere?
I mean, it happened pretty quickly, like quickly enough that when I left my body, I could actually watch as my body fell to the ground. Like that's kind of how fast it was. And it was confusing, of course, at first, but it was pleasant. Like it was actually nice to be out of this body. I was a healthy little kid, other than this breathing problem. But even so, it was just so refreshing and freeing and mentally liberating to be free of this, the confines of this body. This body really restricts us in a way that we're used to it, so we don't think about it. But once you exit, you'll realize how restricted you've been while you're in this body. But the feeling of the flow of time, like I could literally feel like immediately that the time just didn't work the same. I view it as I was in a parallel spiritual dimension. That's how I view it. Like there's a dimension parallel to this physical one that we don't see, but we're kind of simultaneously our soul is in it, I guess. As it progressed, I got more and more comfortable. I got more and more mentally liberated. It was kind of like a fog clearing, kind of like waking up from a deep sleep. So at first, I didn't have full use of my faculties and intelligence and whatnot, but the longer I was there, like the more intelligence I got, the more at ease I got being like that, and the more comfortable I got accessing this pool of information that we're all tied to, that we can all access. And then, I don't know, hopefully that gives you kind of a feel for what it was like.
Yeah, for sure. When you're talking about time, because you said time is different there, what does it feel like?
Yeah, I can't give a full accurate description of how this works. Like I feel like it was created for our benefit so that we could grow and mature and learn very quickly. But it's not like a fundamental trait of our spiritual nature. And so if you think about it, let's say you had something you were trying to understand or figure out, and maybe it would take you a while to figure out. Well, in the spiritual realm, it doesn't take you a while to figure out. Like you can figure it out really quickly. So the net effect of that is like it feels like you're just way more intelligent, or you can process information a lot quicker.
So from this point, we're to the point where you have just barely popped out of your body. This fog is starting to clear. What happens next?
So a couple things happened very quickly. One was my entire life flashed before me. It was like I relived my whole life in like a fraction of a second, but it was in extreme detail. And again, this is where the timeless nature of it kind of comes into play. Like, how could I process my entire life, 6 years of life, in perfect clarity and extreme detail in an instant? Well, it's because time isn't really, time doesn't really apply. But the cool part was, not only did I have my own, replay the thoughts and feelings and emotions and whatnot of my life, but like I could literally feel how I had made other people feel, like how my actions had affected them. Like I could feel it. And what really stood out was my parents. Like I could really feel them because, obviously as a kid, that was who I had the most interaction with, who I had the most effect on. And, I could literally feel like my mother's love, like that stood out. I could tell it was important. It had like a spiritual weight to it. And then, my father is kind of funny. He was a good father, okay, but his frustrations, okay, of having little kids, which I have 3 kids of my own now, so I can totally relate to that. But those frustrations, like that's what stood out to me. Changing a diaper, kid crying, the financial hardships, or not hardships, but just the stress. Like I could feel that. And then another thing that happened very quickly was I noticed like a pinpoint of light in the distance. And I've heard other experiencers talk about this, but I didn't continue to focus on it. I definitely noticed it, and I was like instinctively drawn to it. Like I felt that there was an importance to it, but I didn't continue to focus on it. And that was kind of the first immediate things that happened to me.
Do you feel like at this time when you experience your life review, you see this light in the corner, do you still feel like you're 5 years old?
Immediately after I exited my body, I felt like my perspective was the same. My thinking was the same, but it like really quickly shifted into like I was more mature. I could process information quicker. There was like a background pool of knowledge or experience that I could draw on that kind of, the longer I was there, the more it's like that was integrated into how I viewed things and how I thought. So it kind of morphed as time went on, I guess I could say, but even though time doesn't really apply. But towards the end of my experience, it was like I'm ridiculously intelligent. I can process information. I understood a lot of stuff. And it kind of gradually, progressed throughout the entire experience.
Basically, knowledge and information was just coming to you as you were asking about it. Okay, so now you just had your life review, the light's in the corner. What happens next from that point?
So I was trying to figure out what was going on. I was kind of confused. I was like, what's going on? That kind of thing. Like, obviously, I'm not this physical body. That was just completely obvious. But I was trying to make sense of what was going on, where I was, what was I, I was trying to figure it all out. And one of the first big questions I had was kind of like, well, what am I? And when I asked that question, it was like I could see myself from the outside. It's like I was able to visualize what I looked like. And in that time, I was a round orb of consciousness, like a round ball of faint light, kind of like an egg or a bubble, something kind of like that. And there was a light coming from within me, which I think is interesting. It was a very faint light, but a noticeable light coming from within me. There was like an internal structure that I don't understand. I couldn't describe at all. But it wasn't just like a hollow orb. There was like something inside that I don't really understand what it was, but there was something there, and that's what I looked like. And so that was the first big question I had was, what am I? And well, I was just an orb of consciousness. My next big question was, okay, well, I'm this orb of consciousness. Well, where did I come from? Where did I come from, and what am I doing here? My question was answered by showing me exactly where I had come from and kind of how I got to this planet. Like, that's how I access this information. And it takes me a little while to describe it, but it actually happened extremely quickly in the experience. So I was re-shown this memory, and the memory started out, I was a orb of consciousness, just like I was on, after I left my body. But I was like immature, like I hadn't experienced anything. It's like I was new. I didn't know anything. I didn't understand anything. I had no background or experience or knowledge. But I was with hundreds or thousands of others who were just like me. And we all existed in what I view as a spiritual nursery. It's like we were all new. We didn't know what was going on. We were content, we were happy, but we were ignorant. And we just kind of existed like that. And we were kind of like friends with each other. But periodically we would get a gift, some kind of treat, or as a kid I viewed it as a cookie. Something kind of like that would come down, and we would all get one. And we all enjoyed it, but it wasn't really that big of a deal. But one time, there was one fewer of these gifts than there were souls in the group. And so I made the conscious decision, okay, all these other souls, they want the gift just as much as I do, so I'm just going to let them have it. I'm going to pass. And when the last soul got the last treat or gift, I was very gently lifted up out of this group. And I was contacted, like mind-to-mind communication, telepathic communication, and told that what I did was very important, that it was a big deal, that I gave up something I wanted for those around me. And it indicated that like I was ready, that I was ready to start something. And this entity said that it was my creator and that I was very, very loved and cared for. And so was everybody else. And that existing, like just the fact that I existed was a fantastic thing. Like it was absolutely wonderful. I was really going to enjoy existing. There was so much happiness in store for me. But in order for me to properly enjoy my existence, I needed to get an education. I needed to learn some things. And I asked God basically, okay, can't you just change me? Can't you just make me however I need to be so I can enjoy myself? Like, why do I need to do anything or get an education? Can you just change me? And the answer was, absolutely. God is fully capable of changing me however he might want, but that we were created with free will. And free will is like a cornerstone of our creation. Like it's critically important to God to a degree that I can't even stress enough. Like I can't stress enough how important it is, our freedom and our free will. It's very important to God. He really respects that. And if he changed me or created all of us already mature and complete, it would like be a violation of our free will. And so therefore he wasn't going to do it. That was kind of the gist of it. And he went on to explain the basics. God is loving, kind, compassionate, honest, generous, forgiving, all these positive traits. Like that is what God is. That is who God is. And the entire nature of our existence and enjoyment is centered around those kind of traits. But God's not going to force us into those kind of traits. Instead, he set up this education for us, and we can freely, make our own choices. And when we choose all those positive godly traits, it'll bring us happiness eventually. And when we choose stuff opposite of those godly traits, it's going to bring us disappointment and suffering and pain, that kind of thing. And through this education we're going to go through, we will get these experiences and we will learn, and we will eventually adopt these loving traits for ourselves through our own choices and through our own free will. And that's kind of the gist of how it works. And so I said, to God, okay, I guess that makes sense, that kind of thing. And then, God showed me his face, as I described earlier. And then God basically said, okay, are you ready to go through this experience? Are you sure you're willing to do this? It's going to be hard, it's going to be difficult, but it's going to be very, very brief. And you have to understand that I know life feels like a long time, but from a spiritual perspective, it's very, very short. And I agreed. I said, yes, I'm willing to go through this. And God was very pleased with that. And it's like, bam, I was zooming away from this scene extremely fast into a different realm or a different place, something like that. And we started looking at a whole bunch of different planets, like all kinds of different places I could go. And it was the same kind of situation. It would have been a physical body. I would have been a soul living in this physical body for a short time. And I would, gain wisdom. I would gain experiences. I would get a chance to exercise my free will, and I would learn from the choices I make and the consequences of those choices.
To track back, technically right now in the experience, you are still floating right above your body. And when you ask that question, you are taken into your first memory ever as an existed being. So when you're experiencing this memory, are you physically there watching it, feeling everything as it's coming? Or is it kind of like a TV playing the memory for you?
It was similar to my life review. During the life review, it was like I read everything all over again. And when I had this memory, it was like I re-experienced it all over again and went through the whole cycle again. But it was so fast that, it's hard to really convey that this all happened very quickly, even though it takes a while to explain. But it's like, yes, I was still like in my neighbor's backyard just floating there. But as I experienced this memory, it was like I relived it or re-experienced everything.
From this point now, you're with God and he's showing you all these different types of experiences. And when he was showing you these, obviously you felt called and pulled to Earth, and you talk about Earth as kind of like kindergarten of life, right?
I did get the impression that the Earth is more difficult than a lot of other schools. I felt like when you pick a planet, it's like you're going to stay there for a little while. You don't have to, but that's how most souls end up experiencing what they need to experience. They pick a planet. They start at the lowest levels, and I don't know exactly what the lowest levels mean, but that was something I was told. And they progress. They learn, they experience, they gain consequences, they gain what we would think of as privileges because they've contributed to society or whatever. But my impression was, generally speaking, a soul, keeps going through their education on only one planet.
Continue with your story. God, you're with God. He's showing you all these different worlds. What happens next?
Yeah, so we got to Earth, and I saw this planet and people, and I don't know what it was, but I was like positive. Okay, this is where I want to go. I was absolutely sure that the Earth is where I wanted to go. And God asked me, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yes, I'm sure." And it's like with that second, "Yes, I'm sure," the decision was made, it was finalized, and I was coming to Earth. And that's something that repeated a number of times, where I would make a decision and I would be asked, "Are you sure?" And when I gave the yes, the second yes, I'm sure, then the decision was finalized. And with that, that memory ended, and I was back to my floating around my neighbor's yard.
That's very interesting because, I'm sure as you as well, if you've listened and talked to many other people who have experienced NDEs, and that's a common thing I've heard. Like people will pass away in major, maybe it's a car accident or whatever, right? And they don't have to come back to Earth, but they feel a calling that they should, and they'll be asked the question like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And they'll agree, and then they're just like back in their bodies, right? And maybe that has a lot to do with free will, right? It's like God's like, "Hey, this is up to you, you know. Are you sure? And if you want this, then let's do it," right?
Yeah, and then it's not like he asks if you're sure, 20, 30 times. It's that one, "Yes, I'm sure," and then it's done. It's like that's your final answer.
In terms of free will, why do you think free will is such a cornerstone?
The way I see it is God is extremely powerful. Like we wouldn't even believe how powerful God is. And we're kind of like a smaller than an ant type of thing. And it would be so easy for God to just crush our free will. It's very easy. And in order for that not to happen, he has to be very respectful, or needs to be very respectful of our free will. And that's kind of how I view where it is it's like a matter of, part of loving someone is respecting their right to make their own choices. And God loves us, and the respect that God has for us, I think sometimes that gets ignored or left out. But the respect for us and the respect for our free will and the ability to make our own choices, it was really deep from what I saw.
Okay, so now where we're at in the story is God showed you all these different spots that you could go to, and you decided that Earth was the place that you needed to go, have your education, and then from there, what happens next?
Yeah, so I was kind of like meandering around my neighbor's backyard. I didn't just stay in one spot, kind of like aimlessly roaming type of thing. But the next big question I had was like, why am I this person? Why am I Aaron Thomas Green? Like, how did that happen? And again, it was the same situation where in an instant I re-experienced the events that led me to be Aaron Thomas Green. And it started, I was a soul that it was in some sort of what I view as a midway realm.
Really quick, what do you mean a midway realm?
It was kind of like a planning realm where nothing bad happened and nothing good happened. Just like a free place for souls to exist, where they weren't exposed to any kind of bad elements and they didn't have access to any kind of good elements, but it allowed souls to interact and I guess plan for upcoming lives. Like it seemed like that was the main purpose of it. Like I was kind of like protected from myself, like a padded room, so to speak. I couldn't really hurt myself or anyone else, and it allowed me to interact with my guides and just have a plain conversation in a controlled, safe place to allow us to work out the details for the next phase.
And what is a guide?
So as far as I could tell, guides were souls that had been to Earth a number of times, and they had progressed to where they didn't need to come back to Earth anymore. And now their job, how they worked, what they did, they were trying to help newer souls to progress and to learn what they needed to learn. And they were helping souls to plan out their upcoming lives and help kind of navigate souls through their lives. That's how I viewed these guides.
Gotcha. Continue with your stories. You're in the in-between realm and you're frustrated with yourself. Go ahead.
Yes. And my guides, they wanted me to come back to Earth. They knew I was a mess. They knew I needed to get myself straightened out. And from their perspective, like the fastest way for me to do that is to come back to Earth. But I was like, no, I'm not going back to Earth, and you can't make me. I remember saying that. And they basically were like, well, you're right, we can't make you, but what are you going to do? And I basically responded, well, I'm just going to stay here in this midway realm. And essentially they responded that, well, that would be a big waste. Basically, I would be spending time, I would have remained agitated and frustrated and disappointed in myself. I would have stayed in that condition essentially forever until I finally agreed to accept some kind of help. And they were like, it's pointless for you to remain like this. You'll be missing out on so much if you remain like this. It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't serve the function. And you should go back to Earth. That was kind of what they were doing. But I was like, no, I'm not going back to Earth. And they were very wise, and they understood. Like, I was the screwed up one. They weren't tricking me. They weren't fooling me. They were there to help me, and I was the one with the problems. Okay, I think a lot of people hear about this, and they think my guides were tricking me or fooling me or forcing me. That's not what was going on. I was kind of like, I was the one that was the mess. Okay, I was the one with the problems, not my guides. They were there to help me. But they said, well, how about if we show you some souls you could help if you did go back to Earth? And somehow that cut through my own frustration and my own disappointment in myself into a deeper level where it connected with my desire to help others. And so I agreed, okay, you could show me someone that I could help if I went back to Earth. And they did. They showed me some souls that I could help. And that connected with me at a deeper level. And so I began to become open to the idea. And so my guides wanted to show me, well, how about if we showed you some people you could become if you did go back to Earth? And I agreed. I was like, okay, we could take a look at the options kind of thing. I'm not agreeing to anything, but we can take a look at the options. And so we transitioned to like a different realm that was like a planning realm for upcoming lives. Like that's kind of how I viewed it. It was like a black background, but I could see like whatever person I was going to become or any relevant facts or any people I needed to see. Like any of that stuff could be brought in front of me so I could see it. And the first person they showed me was like a very angry person. And they were kind of like, okay, well, you could become this person and this would help with your spiritual development. But I absolutely rejected it. Like I was like, I'm not being this angry person. There's no way I'm going to do this. No.
Can I ask you, how would an angry person help you with your spiritual development?
It was, you go to the gym, you lift a heavy weight, and you gain muscle, okay? You can work out whatever muscle group you want, and it's like the heavier weight you work, the bigger that particular muscle gets. Well, for me, it was like working against this person who would be angry because of their life circumstances or they might have been abused growing up, something like that. I would be working against that anger, and the effect would be that spiritually I would become more peaceful. I would end up spiritually working in the opposite of anger. It's like my soul having to exert effort to stay peaceful, to function in society, not to get in fights, not to give in to my anger, just so I could live a normal life. Like that would grow me spiritually in the opposite direction of that anger. So it might seem a little counterintuitive that I could have lived as this angry person, and yet spiritually it would help me to grow to be more peaceful. But that was kind of how it worked.
I really quick just wanted to add a note here. Notice how Aaron says that just by living that life and working against the natural desire that the spirit would have had of being angry would have helped that spirit progress to do the exact opposite, just by existing, just by living that life. And I wanted to make that point because oftentimes I feel like we're so focused on trying to become somebody, maybe like Mr. Beast or whatever. The matter of the fact is, first of all, you are important as is, and literally just by being here and going through this life, you are achieving those things that are going to help you spiritually progress. We all have struggles, we all have things we're working on, and I just thought that was just a really important piece. Just being here is enough, and you are doing what you are called to be doing.
But I completely rejected it. I was like, I'm not living this life. No. And so then my guides, they respected that. I was firm that no, and they respected it and said, okay, well, let's look at some other options, basically. And so we transitioned to look at a young family. It was like a mother, father with a young baby, and I could be born as their second child. And we started looking at those details. And it's safe to say that these parents, they had no secrets, okay? We knew everything about them, what kind of people they were, where they were on their spiritual development. what kind of parents they would be, what my interactions with my older brother would be like, what our relationship would be like. All of that stuff was an open book. But we started looking at the genetic possibilities to these parents. I deemed that they would be good parents. They would be a good fit for me, and my guides, I thought they'd be a good fit for me. And I liked a lot of the stuff that these parents offered. And I'll say something else about that. I had previously in past lives raised enough children, been a good enough parent, that gave me the access, the rights to have a wider degree of discretion in what kind of parents I would get. Okay, a soul who's kind of new or has maybe only been a parent a couple times and kind of mistreated their children, they might not necessarily have the same number of options that I had at that point.
And let me ask you this. Why do you think it is that you had more options versus like a much newer soul? Because at this point in the journey, you've maybe already lived a couple of lives on Earth. You're not necessarily a new soul when this experience is going on.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's not just random how people are born. There's like a background to it. And as we contribute to society, as we raise children, as we give to others, we open up our ability to potentially access more things. Like running water. I've got all the clean water I could ever want. Okay, but there's been plenty of previous lives where I didn't have that. But it's kind of like going through those experiences previously. It's like, well, spiritually now I don't need to go through that anymore. It's like I've been through that obstacle, so now I can move on to a life where I've got plenty of water. And it's like that with all kinds of other stuff too. But that's not to say that everyone going through some kind of difficulty like that, it's because they're a new soul or because they've done something wrong in the past. There's other reasons why they could be going through some particular hardship. It's more complicated than just, they screwed up in the past, now they're going through this hardship. That's too simplistic, okay? But anyway, so we started looking at these parents. What kind of children could they have? What were the options that were available? And the first thing that caught my attention was that I could be a redheaded child. And that really piqued my interest because I knew that, like it was like just obvious that red hair color is rare. And that really appealed to me, the rareness of the hair color. So I wanted to be a redhead and I wanted to be a girl because I was really concerned about hurting other people. And I felt like females were less likely to be violent. But it was obvious that being a redheaded girl, like with the genes available to these parents, like there was very few options to pick from. I would be kind of stuck in one specific, I don't know, like look or personality or whatever. It just wasn't quite the right fit. And it was clear that like I would end up being like single my whole life. I would be kind of socially awkward. It just wasn't the right fit. So we started looking, okay, well, what about the boy options? And what about different hair colors? So we started looking at other options, and it was clear that for these parents, brown hair was the dominant trait. And if I picked brown hair, then there's a million other traits I could easily pick from, and I could fine-tune all kinds of other stuff however I wanted to. So it quickly became apparent that the brown hair and the being a boy was a better fit for me spiritually. I don't know, it was just more in sync with where I was or what I was used to. So we started looking at those options, and it was up to me. I could pick whatever I wanted. And at first I wanted to be really, really good looking, like the best looking guy on the planet. And my guides were like, okay, these parents, yes, you can choose that. But if you do, here's the problem. So you'll be arrogant. Women are going to treat you differently. You'll have certain temptations in front of you that you're not going to be able to resist. And the fact that being promiscuous is not in tune with the higher spiritual levels it was like self-evident. I know that might be confusing to people, but just take my word from it. If you're running around like a bunny rabbit, that's not in tune with the higher spiritual levels. It's just not. And so I realized that, hey, this is not the right pick for me. So we lowered the attractiveness down to a little bit attractive, but not gorgeous, not a model. And then we did the same thing with intelligence. I wanted to be like the smartest guy ever, like Albert Einstein kind of stuff. And my guides pointed out, okay, you can choose that if you want, but here's the downsides. You'll be arrogant. You'll look down on other people for not being smart. You'll end up becoming an atheist, and you'll have trouble making friends. And it was clear that those were spiritual downsides that I didn't want. So again, we lowered the intelligence down to a smart guy, but no Einstein, no Aristotle or anything like that. Just a little bit smart kind of thing. And then, this body, we looked at all the details. Yeah, how tall, what kind of physical size, that kind of stuff. And then personality traits, like what I would be good at. I remember that, picking like being good at math and science. I'm an engineer, and like having some strengths in that area. It was just the right fit for me and what I was looking for in life. And so when we had all that stuff picked, my guides had some plans for what they wanted me to go through in life. And they started showing me stuff I had done in previous lives. They would show me like a little clip or scene from a previous life, something I had done. And it was like, I don't really like using the word karma, but that's really like a good word for it. It was like I'd done something in a previous life and created this unbalanced mathematical equation, and now I had to balance it out the other way. So like the way I had treated people in a past life, if I had mistreated them, then now I might be on the receiving end of that same kind of treatment. That was kind of the gist of it. But I'd like to add that it felt like the accounting of these events, it was all done in my favor. Like I feel like what I was receiving wasn't as bad as what I had given out. But the clearest example I could give of that, they showed me a fight I'd gotten into in a previous life where I'd beat this guy up really badly when I had no reason to do so. And then in this life, they were going to arrange for me to have my nose broken, but they needed my agreement to it, and I agreed to it. I knew it was going to help me with my spiritual progression and kind of like resolve this past event. But they showed me a lot of different things I had done. Some of it's frankly too terrible to get into. Like in past lives, it was clear I'd done some really screwed up things that I would never do. I would never do now. Which, on one hand, it's horrible that I did this stuff, but on the other hand, it's like, well, at least I've made progress. I'm not doing that kind of horrible stuff. But but they needed my agreement in order to plan this stuff out. And for the most part, I agreed to what they wanted or what they suggested, because I knew it was in my own best interest. And when they got through all these past life events, they had other plans for my life. They had arrangements with me and other souls and other people. Sometimes I would be helping other people, or I would play some key role that would benefit them or allow their life to progress as intended, or they would play some key role in my life that would allow my plan to progress as intended. And there was like a back and forth where I'm helping other people and they're helping me, and it's kind of all planned out. And my guides and the guides for all these other people, they could plan all this stuff out and make arrangements behind the scenes, like very easily. Like this is just what they do, and this happens all the time. And you might think, well, how the heck can you balance a whole world full of souls with all these different plans, and yet still maintain room for everybody to have free will? Well, God can do that. Okay, I don't know exactly how it's done, but He was doing it. The guides were helping, and we maintained our free will, but we did have a plan for how we were going to work with each other. But they needed my agreement. Okay, they couldn't just force some plan on me. But I agreed to all kinds of stuff, and other souls agreed to all kinds of stuff. And these agreements, why would we agree to some of this stuff? Well, it maximizes our spiritual growth and development. Okay, but when we had all these agreements in place and the body picked, my guides basically said, okay, now take a look at everything that you've picked. Are you sure you're willing to go through with this? Excuse me. So we took a look at the entire life, everything I'd chosen, everything I'd agreed to. And I said, yes, I'm willing to go through with this. And this was kind of like one of those, is that your final answer kind of thing? Are you sure you agree? And when I agreed the second time, it's like, bam, the decision was made, and I was off to begin this life. And that ended this question I had. How did I become this person? Like it had been answered. I saw the whole process, and then bam, it's like I was back to just kind of meandering around my neighbor's yard.
One of the next key points that I want to dive into here, one of the things that you had to struggle with was an alcohol addiction through this lifetime.
Yeah, so that was in the life planning process. The way I saw it was that in a previous life, I had contributed it to somebody else having an addiction. I think what was going on is there was some kind of drug that I was selling to this person. And it was basically ruining their life. But it was like I was making money off of this. So I just kind of laughed at them, look at this fool giving me this money. But, I was in the wrong, okay? What I was doing was wrong. I was taking advantage of this person. I was contributing to the problems in their life, that affected more than just them. And my guides, in order to put me on the other side of that so I could learn, right? Here, I had played this role, but if I get the consequences of that kind of role and face addiction for myself, that I'll learn from it. And that was the gist of it. And alcohol is kind of what we settled on, as this is the kind of addiction that works for me. And ironically, I talk about this in my book, but I don't usually get into it. But that's part of the reason that I picked this name. I was able to pick my name because it was going to be the name I'd have my whole life. I was actually able to exert, or allowed to exert, a little bit more influence over my parents. And one reason I picked Aaron is because of that AA at the beginning of my name. It played into Alcoholics Anonymous, which was actually important for me, helped me get off of my alcohol addiction.
And one of the things that you talk about is, for example, it's like, let's just say you have an alcohol addiction, and you in this life, right? You've been sober for over 10 years. Congrats, that's amazing. A key thing that you also learn from that is control, right? Which is a very heavenly principle, a very important thing in the heavenly realms, to have control. Did you have any idea what happens when somebody struggles with, alcoholism or drugs or whatever, and their life ends?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. A substance abuse problem or an addiction is actually a spiritual problem. I know it manifests itself as a physical addiction, but it's a deeper problem, okay? And we need to overcome those problems. I was shown that a couple things, that I would have this alcohol addiction, and ironically that I would know about, that I would have these memories of my experience, and that I could either give up alcohol or I could kind of remain in alcohol. And what I saw was that if I kept using alcohol for my whole life, even though I knew that it had consequences and I understood about the spiritual nature of our existence, that would be setting myself up for some really bad consequences. And I was shown that if I continued to drink with the knowledge that I had, that I would need to come back to earth again, and I would have a life where my entire life was one big battle with addiction, and I would die an addict. But I would suffer so much during that life that then the next life, when I came back, I would be guaranteed that I'd be able to overcome that addiction. But I could save myself all that frustration and difficulty if I just beat the addiction during this life. And I was shown that these were the two possibilities for how this could play out. So I'm very pleased with myself that I've been able to give up alcohol. One of the best things I ever did was giving up alcohol, but that's a whole different story. But look, if you've got some sort of addiction, it's in your best interest to beat that addiction now. The sooner the better, because you're going to have to beat it one way or another. And the longer you stay in it, the more suffering it's going to bring you. And I was shown all this during my life planning process, where they showed some of these different options that I would have.
Congrats on overcoming it. That's awesome. And what advice would you give to anybody out there who may be struggling with alcoholism or drugs or whatever it may be? What kind of advice would you have for them?
Everyone's got to face that battle for themselves. But for me, Alcoholics Anonymous was very helpful. They have a good program that was very helpful to me personally. And I know there's lots of other people who benefit from that program. I think also alcohol and addiction, it kind of tricks you. It kind of ruins your life and convinces you that everything else in your life is all screwed up. But this substance, like alcohol or drugs or whatever it is, that's the good thing in your life, right? But really that's a lie. It's actually the exact opposite of that. And if you can recognize that you're being lied to by this substance, okay, it's tricking you. Maybe that could help someone to give up this addiction. And the other thing is, look, you're going to have to give it up. You give it up in this life, it's easier. If you wait and give it up into the next life, you're just going to have so much more suffering you're going to have to go through in order to give up this addiction. The sooner you make that choice and do the work of giving up this substance, the better. And then, I talked to an addiction guy. This was years ago, but he said something that kind of stuck with me. Having this addiction is a bit like being in a hot tub full of feces when it's really cold outside. Okay, it's absolutely disgusting, but it's warm and comfortable, and you're used to it. And in order to get cleaned up, you've got to get up out of this warm hot tub, walk through the cold air, and go take a cold shower before you're able to go into the nice, comfortable house. And that's kind of what it's like giving up an addiction. It's challenging. It's a change. It's uncomfortable, but it's worth it. Okay, it's totally worth it to go through the change. It gets easier as time goes on. Giving up your addiction is really hard right at first, but it gets progressively easier. Okay, and it's worth it. So, I would encourage anyone who's facing addiction to take those steps, do what's necessary, beat the addiction now to avoid all kinds of trouble that addiction is going to bring you one way or another.
So let me get back on track to where we were in the story.
There's one more big question I had, which was kind of like, I knew that I'd lived many lives. Okay, I can't even tell you how obvious that was, that everyone's living multiple lives. It was painfully obvious.
Can I actually pause you on that super quick? So reincarnation, right? That is a very interesting topic for a lot of people. A lot of people have a very difficult time understanding that that's even a possibility. Probably because I think we can all agree this, I think I have an amazing life and gosh, it sucks. You know what I mean? And there's way worse lives out there, trust me. But I think everybody, in a sense, really resonates with that. And probably it's because, it's so unnatural to be human, to be here, to go through hard things. But, in terms of talking about reincarnation and living multiple lives, is there anything that you could maybe help somebody who's having a hard time understanding why that would be a thing, and maybe give them a little bit of maybe peace or understanding as to the importance of that?
I guess the first thing I would throw out there is the same people that have a lot of trouble believing that a soul could live multiple lives have accepted this idea that God is torturing souls for all eternity. Okay, how society has accepted that, or a lot of Christian communities or other religions have accepted this idea that God is torturing souls for all eternity, but the idea that God gives souls a second, third, fourth chance is unacceptable. I don't know how we got here, okay? It doesn't make any sense to me. But we need to get it out of that because it's not right. It's just not working. Look, we have multiple lives. It's just how it works. I think you can accept. One thing I'd like to point out is, look, God is fair, okay? One individual life is obviously not fair, okay? We all recognize that. There's stuff going on where you're like, well, obviously something's not fair. It only appears not. It's like a deliberate illusion, okay? It actually is fair when you consider what happened before for that person, the spiritual development they get out of their life, and then what's going to happen afterwards. If you consider that there's multiple lives going on here, it becomes a lot easier to accept that God is fair and that this spiritual journey that we're all on is fair. People can think what they want to think, but I saw it for myself. We have multiple lives, and lots of other experiencers have seen it for themselves, okay? I'm not the only one who's sharing this information. It just makes sense if you think about it, that God gives souls multiple chances. And I'm telling you, it's how it works, and so are countless other people.
And then just to really add on top of that, basically my understanding of it is, if you needed to learn how to be all of the characteristics that God has, which is caring, loving, kind, do you really think that you could learn all of those in 100 years?
People need to reach their own conclusions, but...
What was the question again? Remind me, Aaron.
Yeah, so basically my question was like, okay, I've lived many lives. What was I doing between lives? That was the gist of my question. And it's like I re-experienced what I would call clips, like a brief snippet from between lives. I got a real good picture of what I'd been doing between some of these different lives. And there was a wide range, everything from really terrible to really terrific. And if you want, I'll step through some of these things. It started with the first thing I saw was what I would consider to be a hellish realm. I had the appearance of like a monster. Instead of having arms, I had claws. I had a thick exoskeleton. I was dark. Kind of like a cross between a bug and a praying mantis, something kind of like that. And I was with other beings who were just like me. And it was in this unpleasant, rocky realm with like a dark sky. And we just fought with each other. That's all we did. All we knew was trying to hurt each other, trying to kill each other. And no matter how badly we injured each other, the wounds, even though they were very painful, they would quickly heal. And so we were just fighting. And it was never going to change. That's just where we were. But eventually something changed inside me. I got tired of this fighting. I didn't want to hurt them anymore. I didn't want to hurt these others who were with me anymore. And as I knocked one of these other souls to the ground, I wanted to help him up. Like it's like snap. It's like I snapped out of it, kind of thing. And as soon as I had this idea that I wanted to help this other soul instead of hurt them, this being of light, there was a couple angels or being of light up above. One of them swooped down and pulled me up out of this horrible fight. And I asked him, why did you pull me out of this fight? And he told me, when you no longer want to hurt these others, you don't belong here anymore. And he went on to tell me that every one of these souls, all of them, everyone who was fighting, they would all eventually leave, that none of them were going to be stuck like that forever. Like, he directly told me that.
Okay, really quick. This part is not Aaron's life on any kind of Earth or planet. This is the space between lives, and here's how it works. The life you live tunes you like a radio dial. If you live with anger and cruelty, you'll tune really low. If you live with love and kindness, you'll tune really high. Wherever you're tuned when you die, that's the realm that you wake up in. More or less. This is a really simplistic version. So this dark place, the bug, the body, the endless fighting, is not punishment. It just matches the state his last life left him in. And he doesn't get rescued out of it magically. He gets out the moment something inside of him changes. Again, that whole free will thing is very important. When he looks at the soul and he's fighting and he thinks, I don't want to hurt you anymore, that was that change, and instantly he was lifted out. None of these places are permanent. They're just where you sit until you're ready to grow, which means it only ever moves in one direction, which is better.
And then I saw another realm I had been in. This was it was like a very, very dark realm, and I was just standing around with a whole bunch of other souls who were just like me. We were all confused. It was dark. We didn't understand what was going on. I think we had all been atheists, and we had been, mildly like dishonest people, but not bad. But this was kind of like an unpleasant realm, but it wasn't terrible. Okay, it wasn't awful. But there was higher level souls who they like glowed their own light. They were like translucent beings of light, but they didn't seem as high level as what I would consider to be an angel. But anyway, they were going around trying to help us, but we were very mistrustful. Like, we weren't the kind of people or souls that would help somebody else. So when someone shows up to try to help us, it was like a foreign concept, and we had a lot of trouble accepting that here this being of light is here to help me. Like, that was like a foreign concept. But eventually, one of these beings of light, he actually he convinced me, and I accepted his help. They were trying to help us out of this unpleasant realm, and so I accepted his help, and I went with him, and he helped me transition into something else. And there was this other realm I had been in, where it looked like a small town that you might see in like some portions of the earth, where there's like dirt roads and there was buildings, but the buildings were kind of like crooked and ugly, and they were kind of like decrepit, and I was like unhappy, but again, not miserable, just a little unhappy, but basically it looked like a scene you might see on Earth, just everything was a little bit worse. But again, there was this being of light, an angel, who was going around trying to help us, and everyone pretty much had trouble accepting help from this guy or this angel or being or whatever it was. But I started like interacting with him, communicating with him, and essentially he opened up my vision to where I could see a higher level of heaven. And what I saw, it looked like beings of light zooming around in a cloud. Like, that's what it looked like to me. And the happiness of these beings that he showed me was extraordinary. They were so filled with happiness that they couldn't even contain it. And they were like to release some of this happiness, they were like singing. Like, this noise was coming out of them that was this beautiful, like a beautiful song kind of thing. Like, that's how happy they were, that they couldn't even contain it. And I wanted that happiness for myself. I wanted to go up to that level. So this being told me that he couldn't just move me up to that level, but he could help me transition. It would take my own effort, my own work, in order to get to where I was at that level. But eventually I could reach that level. That's kind of what he told me. And he would help me get started. And then I was shown some of the happier realms that I'd been in. There was one realm where, again, it looked kind of like Earth, but the buildings were prettier, the streets were better, there was no earthly problems, the stuff that the various little problems we have here on Earth, there wasn't that kind of stuff. And the souls there, they were continuing to do the same kind of stuff they had done in life. In this realm, it was just like Earth, but it was like a perfected version of Earth, and everyone there was very happy, and they were continuing to do the same kind of stuff that they had done on Earth. And I remember specifically there was one lamppost that I looked at that was very ornate and beautiful. For some reason, I took a close look at that. But I quickly left this realm because I recognized it as a midway realm, or like I knew there was better realms than this. So I quickly left so I could continue my spiritual progress. I saw another realm that I'd been in where it was like a city of light. Like the buildings and the souls there, they were all translucent and kind of like made of light. and the happiness there was significantly higher than this previous life. And then of course I'd seen the highest realm, or the highest level that as I understood it, which was where the souls were with God when I had first become first come into existence. That was kind of like a high level of heaven. But when I'd seen all these levels, I was back to floating around in my neighbor's backyard as a soul, and I began to realize that, wow, when I'm done with this life, I'll be able to go back to one of these happy heavenly realms. And I was so happy about that. I was just thrilled, and I was ready to go. I was ready to move on to one of these heavenly realms. But as soon as I had that realization, there was like an angel or a being of light, some absolutely beautiful spiritual creature came at me very quickly, and he said, "You are not to leave your body." And like in an instant, bam, I was back in my body. I didn't have any breathing problem. I stood up. I was kind of confused. At that point, my brother had come to check on me. I think I had been out of my body for roughly 30 seconds Earth time. And I stood up and I went straight home. And I remember I tried to explain this. I tried to explain what had happened to my mom. But as a little kid, there's no way I could verbalize this stuff. It just wasn't in the realm of possibilities.
Okay, so basically the different realms you just explained, right, obviously started from quite a much lower vibration realm and kept leading all the way up to much happier, healthier spaces in a sense. And so do you think that every single one of those realms was basically the end point of one of your lives in transition to the next life after life?
The way I view it is, during life, we kind of attune ourselves to a spiritual frequency, so to speak. Kind of like, on the old car radios, you can tune into a different frequency. Well, that's kind of what we're doing spiritually here on Earth. By every choice we make, every thought we have, we're tuning ourselves into some spiritual channel. And those that are dominated by hate and anger and stealing and hurting other people, you're tuning yourself into a very unpleasant spiritual channel, and that's kind of where you're going to be when you die. Those who are loving, kind, they try to be good to other people, try to help people, they're generous, they serve others. You're really tuning yourself to a very positive spiritual channel, and kind of like that's where you're going to end up when you die. And that's how I view these different realms I was in. It's just kind of like the culmination of all the decisions I had made in life. That's where I ended up. And so, we're not just passive observers in our existence, okay? We are active participants, and the choices we make in life, they directly play into what kind of experience we're going to have in the afterlife, and they play into what kind of experience we're going to have in future lives. So it's in our own best interest to make these positive, loving choices. Get with the program, be good to others. Like it's not that hard. It's not that much to ask, but if you do it, you're going to be rewarded for it.
Just a couple questions, because obviously this nears the end of your story. You mentioned that Earth is in a sense a kindergarten, and so when you say kindergarten, would you say that there are other realms that we can reincarnate in that are much happier?
Yeah, that was kind of my impression. I didn't see all that specifically, but that was my impression. Kind of between the reading between the lines, that was my impression. I view it like if you want to make a piece of smooth wood or something. Well, first you go out to the tree, you get an axe, right, and then you get this rough planer, and then you get the belt sander, and then you progress to better and better, finer and finer sandpaper as you're progressing. And I view our spiritual development kind of like that. We're in the rough stage right now, where God's got like this belt sander on us, right, and smoothing out the kinks, getting rid of our problems, kind of thing. And as we move up to higher levels, well, it gets softer and softer and more nuanced and more pleasant, frankly. We don't have such difficult hardships. That's kind of how I view it. And I think the Earth realm is one of these low-level realms where we got to get the basics. Okay, this is really basic stuff. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't murder, don't rape people, don't torture anyone. This is really basic stuff. Okay, we can get this. You can master this and move on to higher levels.
How come you would say it's so much harder to change our mindset in the spiritual realm, even though we're connected to so much more information? To me, it just seems like, okay, well, obviously God's real, so how come I just kick this bucket? Help me understand that.
The exact mechanism of it I can't really explain, but basically in the spiritual realms, we exist at a much higher degree of freedom. Like we can do what we want to do. Like we're not restrained by this physical body. We're not restrained by social norms. We're not restrained by how we think other people are going to think of us. We're free to a level that's hard to understand while we're here trapped in this body. But the side effect of that extra freedom or that natural freedom that we all have is that it's much more difficult to change yourself. There's nothing, it's like not the forces that are on you, that the pressure and challenges necessary for you to change. It doesn't work that way in the spiritual realms, but we do have significant freedom. But here in this life, we're restrained quite a bit. We have a lot of, we have this body holding us back. We have our money. We have our desire to maintain social norms. What other people are going to think about that. All of that. It restrains us in a way and challenges us in a way that allows us to change that doesn't exist in the spiritual realm. So it's kind of it's one of the core reasons for this physical realm in the first place, is that we can change very quickly, whereas change is very challenging or difficult in the spiritual realms. It's relatively easy and fast here in this physical realm, and that's one of the key points of why we're here in the first place, is because it allows us to change so quickly when compared to the spiritual realm.
Great and crappy part about that is you can go downhill super fast, and I guess you can go uphill super fast.
As I understand it, we don't actually lose our spiritual progression. It's more like a detour. But if we do screw up a life, we're going to be faster the next time around to get ourselves straightened out. So it's not like it's not all bad, even though we make some mistakes. Like those mistakes allow us to grow and learn and rebound faster than we could have without the mistakes.
On Earth, you make a mistake and you're like, yeah, that's bad. But the reality of everything that we live, it's nothing's good, nothing's bad. It just is what it is, and you just try to take what you can learn from it. So I love that.
It's not bad, but it can create painful consequences for you. I try to word it a little differently. Instead of good and bad, it's like pleasant consequences or unpleasant consequences, and so you can kind of choose for yourself.
When you were face to face with God, what did He actually look like? Like what were you looking at when you were face to face with God?
Yeah, so what I saw, and I don't think just I've been face to face with God. I think we all have, but I just happen to remember it. What I saw was a huge sun-like entity. And the difference between what we think of as the sun and what I saw was that there was billions and billions and billions of souls that were all together with this sun-like entity. They were like each soul was kind of like a drop in a giant ocean. But this huge entity was made up of these individuals that all contributed to the whole that made up God. And some of these individuals, they came to the surface to see me, to welcome me into existence. And when they did, I could see their faces clearly. So picture a huge sun-like entity with millions and millions and millions of souls, some of whom came to the surface so I could see their face clearly. And that's what God looked like to me.
And when you say that these souls came up to you and you saw their faces, I'm trying to imagine what could their faces even look like? Was it human? Was it more of just like an energy?
It was like, what I saw was like eyes and a mouth. I don't remember exactly, but it just looked like what you think of as a face. Like that's basically what I saw, and a whole bunch of them. Not just one, of course.
Right. And when this happened, obviously, first of all, you're staring at the face of God, and then these spirits come to not present this. These spirits come to say hello and greet you. What was the purpose of them coming to say hello? Because from your book, from what I understand, is it was kind of a sacrifice for them to look away from what they were doing and come say hello to you.
Yeah, they were so unbelievably happy, just filled with joy with what they were doing. And so to kind of take their attention off of that to come focus on me, it reduced their happiness. I mean, they were still incredibly happy, but just that reduction in happiness was like a hardship for them. But they had been through what I am now going through, which is this physical experience to gain an education. They had all been through that. They had learned what they needed to learn. They had progressed however far they needed to progress, and now they were just enjoying their existence. And they were really excited that I was going to join them because, me and everyone else, we're all unique and irreplaceable. We're priceless, and we just can't be replicated. No one else can do what we do. And so they were really excited that I was going to join them because it would increase their happiness even more than even though they're already incredibly happy. When I joined them, that would increase their happiness even a little bit more. And so they were excited about that. And then they were just, kind of like being nice, like welcome me into an existence. They were happy to see me, excited about the prospect of me coming to join them. And that's kind of why they even though it was a hardship, that was why they came up to say hello.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I know these things are super hard to explain. It's fun to imagine. I genuinely I feel like I have a good idea, but I'm sure I have absolutely no idea, So, well, sweet. Okay.
Like the wisest person on earth with the best understanding of God, it is still like nothing. It's just, as a human, we're just barely scratching the surface kind of thing.
Right. Right. And I obviously was built that way, which is fine. We'll all one day.
Right, right.
Probably sooner than we think, right? So Aaron, now that we've had obviously that experience, I think we're nearing the end here. First of all, how can people get to know you better, get in contact with you?
I'm easy to find. You can email me, aarongreen1975 at gmail.com. I have a website, aaronthomasgreen. I have a YouTube channel, and I have a book out. I'm easy to find, Aaron Thomas Green. If you're interested in the book where I go through all this stuff in detail, you can look for Aaron Thomas Green on Amazon, and my book will pop up. And people contact me all the time with questions or comments, or they have some kind of event going on in their life and they want my feedback, which is fine. I'm happy to provide that. But I had this experience as a kid. I think it provides insight into our spiritual nature and how all of this works. And so I'm just trying to share that in whatever way I can.
I have all that stuff linked below as well, so you can just go there and check out Aaron's book, go to his YouTube channel. If you could have one piece of advice to help you move forward, right? That's what we're all here for. We're helping humanity move forward. What would that one piece of advice be?
Yeah, to me, this all boils down to the most important thing, and if you're into the Bible, Jesus pretty much said the same thing. Love, and by love I mean all the manifestations of love: kindness, compassion, honesty, integrity, service, generosity, self-restraint. All of these things are very important to us on the spiritual level, but also that is what is going to help move this world forward. Okay, we don't have to go kill the bad guys or do something crazy. We just need to exercise all these godly traits with our neighbors, and that will have a trickle-down effect for the entire globe and help move humanity forward and save us all from a lot of unpleasant consequences and just make this whole thing easier. Okay, we're going to get there anyway. We might as well just get with the program quickly and be a good person, do the things that we know we should be doing, and we're going to be glad that we did.
Super appreciate you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for hopping on and sharing all your insights. Yeah, it's super fun. Well, that's Aaron's story, everybody. A kid who stopped breathing for 30 seconds and came back with answers to the questions all of us are carrying. If you take one thing from this, you're here to learn how to love, be kind, and help where you can, and don't wait to become a good person. The detail in Aaron's book, the life planning, choosing his own body, the realms between lives, it's all in there and in his own words. If any part of this hit you, go ahead and read it. It's totally worth it. It's linked down below. Read it once, read it again. It'll change how you see your whole life. And Aaron, thank you again for hopping on with me, for remembering it and sharing it. We really appreciate it. And one last thing, I don't make videos like this very often. If you want more, let me know by leaving me a comment, and I would love to do more of these. But whoever wants to see it would be great. Share this with someone who needs it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.